Alrighty, so what this lesson is going to cover is, some of you have done this before, some of you have not done this before. If you have, I'm asking you to do it again so that you can refresh your charcoal usage. So if you don't have these supplies, hopefully you can get them sometime this week, or I can have them up at the front office for you guys to pick up. And then, if you pick them up from here, again, these are things that you're going to be borrowing and you'll have to return them. So this is Willow. It's just soft charcoal, and I have about 4 pieces of it. I'm going to show you how to use that. And then I have 2 different charcoal pencils. I don't know if you can see it very well, but I have, this one says 2B, and then this one says 6B. Okay, and so they're a little bit different, and we'll go over why they're different. And then I also have a kneaded eraser. That's that stretchy gummy eraser that everybody likes to play with. I don't even need that much. I'm just going to break it in half. You don't even need that much. And then also on both of my pencils, I have some pencil top erasers. I prefer those a lot of times over my kneaded eraser. It just depends on what you prefer. Okay, so those of you that are familiar with this, great. But I'm just going to go through this. And then those of you that aren't familiar with this, I hope you watch it all the way to the end. So you're going to have a sphere, a pyramid, a cube, and a cone. So you don't have this. All right. So these are the 4 forms that you're going to want to draw in your sketchbook. I'll leave it here for a few seconds. Obviously, you can rewind and come back to see what they look like. I'm going to draw them into my sketchbook, and then I'm going to show you how to shade them in and use the charcoal. So the first one was the sphere. So see how I'm using Willow to draw my shape. If you want to start with your pencil, you can, if you've never used this stuff before, but the thing is lead that's in your pencil and charcoal don't really mix. You can kind of still see the lead shining through a little bit. And then sometimes when you use your pencil and let's say you erase, if you press really hard, it kind of leaves a big indent in your paper. So we don't really need our pencil right now. So then also with my sphere, I had to have a shadow being cast because we have light that's coming from the top left. So that means it's going to get darker on the far right. So Willow, I can write it here. That's what I'm saying. Willow Charcoal, it's just really, really soft charcoal, and it's kind of like our rough draft for where we put our values. So as light is shining on a circular object, it's going to kind of create this moon shape, okay? When we create shapes, what we don't want to do is do this, okay? We never want to make a line here because then later on it's going to be hard to get rid of that line. Lines make things look flat, give them borders and edges, which we don't really want right now. So yes, you are going to be shading in this moon shape, but we don't want to create that line. So when I do this on this one, you gotta be kidding me. All right, so I'm going to use my Willow. And when I use my Willow, I'm always kind of using the side of it. Again, remember, you never want it to be scratchy because then when you blend it in with your fingers, see how you can still see those lines, whereas opposed to this, it's nice and smooth, okay? So I'm going to imagine that crescent moon shape that I just showed you previously. I'm just kind of putting in just like a soft layer. So where you put Willow is wherever you see value or darkness or shadows, okay? Right now we're not looking at a sphere, but I'm just kind of imagining it. And then after I put the Willow in, then I'm going to use my finger and I'm going to soften it towards my light source up here, this highlight area. So what we're trying to achieve here is for the values to go from light to medium to really dark, okay? And so right now I'm just lightly putting in that Willow. I'm not going to worry about my shadow right now. That comes later. So now I have two different charcoal pencils. I have my 2B and my 6B. If you've never used them before, your 2B creates medium to lighter values. And so see how there I was just making my strokes close together and constant. Again, you never want to use it like this. That's very wrong because it's scratchy and it has lines. You never want to do that. So if you've never used this before, maybe on another sheet of paper, play around with this stuff to just kind of get the feel of it. So here I am creating a little gradient scale. See how I'm going back and forth to try to get this really dark. And then I kind of got my dark value, so I'm happy with it. And now I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to lighten up on my pressure and let it get really light as I can, gradually. It's kind of hard to do. Maybe some of you need to practice this again. Okay, so how I get things darker is by layering it over and over again. And also by changing directions. That's called cross-hatching. That's also how you get things darker. I'm not sitting here, and I don't want to use my charcoal pencil because I hate doing that. And I don't want to sit here and press really, really hard with my charcoal. Or if you're just using pencil right now, it's the same idea. You never want to press really, really hard because that's ruining the paper and it's just not going to get you the effect that you want. So I'm using my 6B. That's really soft. Okay, so that's usually what you want to use first. You're probably going to use that one a lot because it can get so dark. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start over here in the bottom right-hand corner, and I'm just putting in this really dark value with my 6B. And see how my strokes are really short and precise. They're really close together. Not pressing too hard. I'm taking my time and I'm letting this layer and build up. Because also why you want a lot of layers is so that then when I'm ready, I can use those layers that I just applied and blend it towards my light source, my highlighted area. Because if you had just pressed down really hard, there wouldn't really be anything to blend with. It's all about layering it and having patience and taking your time. And see how I'm kind of like using my strokes and going with the shape of my circle. I'm not like going up and down and left and right. Okay, I'm not in a square or rectangular shape. I'm in this round shape. So even my strokes, I want them to also model this form that I'm drawing. So I got some more on. Now I'm going to kind of soften that up towards the highlight. And so now I have this really nice dark value. I need more of a medium value. So now that's when I'm going to bring in my 2B pencil. Okay, and that's more of a medium value. So now what I'm going to do, and see also how I'm holding my pencil. I'm holding it kind of towards the back, and it's really loose. I'm not holding it like a regular pencil. I'm not writing a paper or writing math problems, because then I would tend to press hard. I want to hold it up here and be really loose and light with it. And so now I'm just going to really lightly apply pressure. And I don't have to do much. I'm just kind of putting in just like a really light gray layer of this 2B. I'm being really, really light with it. And see how then over here I blended, I merged these values together, I overlapped them. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to use my finger to soften this. Sometimes when you're doing this, you have to go back and forth with your pencils. You're like, okay, maybe I need more contrast. Contrast is a big word we use a lot. I want this to have contrast compared to up here. This needs to be super dark, medium, light. That's what you're trying to achieve. So now I'm ready to kind of build my contrast. Be like, okay, I really need it a little bit darker. I'm not pressing hard. I'm just taking my time and I'm layering it. because then I can soften it after I add it. You don't really want to see where these values begin and end. That's kind of the hardest part to achieve, is to try to get these to blend and merge. All right, so I'm kind of happy with what's going on here. So now, now I still need my erasers. So I have my kneaded eraser, which is moldable, okay? And then I have my pencil top eraser. So they serve different purposes. So my kneaded eraser, I need to clean up this edge up here. It's a little messy. So I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to just simply erase. And so see how, watch this, I'll just go ahead and do this. See how when I erase, it creates this fine line or fine edge where my highlight was? I don't really ever want that. After you erase, no matter what you're using, you usually always have to come back in and soften that edge there. And that's a really hard and tricky area to get it to look like it's blended really well. What else I can do, because I'm going to create a background and see how I'm using my Willow. And I'm doing that because now, see, I have an edge. I don't want really an outline up here. I want my background to come into my sphere, and now I've created this edge. And so now my sphere kind of looks like it's somewhere, and it has a background to it. And see how I need to go up there and clean it up a little bit. I can do the same thing can happen with my pencil top eraser. It's just going to be what you prefer. After you use your pencil top eraser, it's going to create these little eraser shavings. You got to be careful not to be because then you you move everything. So that's when you usually come in and maybe, move them with your finger or blow on your paper, and hopefully they move out of the way. So I'm going to come back to my 2B. I feel like I need a little bit more medium value up here because I kind of erased some of it. I can soften my background, but I want to make sure it's still nice and clean around that edge. Also, another thing that your kneaded eraser can do, your kneaded eraser can be a blending tool. You'll kind of figure out ways to use this. You can use it simply to blot or press on it. And just by doing that, it kind of lifts a layer of your charcoal. So that's another way to use it. Sometimes if your kneaded eraser is really dirty from the charcoal, you can blend something like that. Sometimes it just kind of depends. You'll figure out different ways to use this. When your kneaded eraser becomes dirty with charcoal, to simply clean it, you just kind of stretch it apart or break it apart, and magically it cleans itself. That's why a lot of people like this one. Okay, so then your shadow, I always put Willow down first, and see how I just put in just a really soft layer. I don't need to press super hard. This is just getting something there. And then I'm going to use my 6B pencil because that one is my darker value. It gets it nice and dark. And this is just practice, so don't feel like you need to make this super dark because then that's kind of wasting your pencil. Just go over it a couple of times to make it just a nice dark value, and then just be done. I'm definitely more concerned about what's going on in the sphere. I mean, I know you can fill in a shape with charcoal. That's easy, one flat value. But the trick or the test is to actually get the sphere to look like it's curved and that it's round. So that's the sphere. The next shape was the pyramid. So again, I'm going to sketch in my pyramid. You'll have to sketch it in too with your Willow. And then I have my shadow coming off to the side. All right. So my pyramid is going to be different than this because it's just two flat sides. So this side is the furthest away from my sun, so that's probably going to be pretty dark. So this one's pretty easy. So I'm just going to fill it in with Willow, just do a really light layer, and see how I blend it in. And then I'm going to use my 6B pencil to give it this nice darkness. Now when I'm filling it in, don't get carried away and just hurry, hurry, hurry and press really hard. Take your time, just like you were with the sphere, to fill this in. It's just take your time and layer it to get it nice and dark. And then after you add it, then blend it in to get it nice and smooth and dark. And always make sure you want to come by the outside and keep that clean looking. So this side is going to be Willow plus 6B. So this side's going to be a little bit lighter because there's probably some sunlight that's hitting it. So this side, I always put Willow down first, and now I'm using like the full side of my Willow. You always want your Willow to be like a small, manageable piece. You don't want it to be like the full long stick that it comes in, because it's easier to manage when it's like this. Okay, so there's my Willow. So some of you are probably like, well, that's probably like a nice medium value. It is, but we don't want to just leave it with Willow. We always want to put something over it. So then I'm going to lightly come in and take my time and fill in with my 2B to get it like a nice medium value. I want these two sides of my pyramid to be different values. They can't be the same. So after I fill it in, and my strokes are close together. So after I fill it in, I'm going to be like, well, maybe I want to make this a little bit lighter. I feel like they're too close to the same value. So that's when my eraser comes in. So now I'm going to kind of soften it and lighten it with my kneaded eraser or your pencil top eraser. I want to make sure I don't have outlines over here, like dark lines still hanging out from when I use my Willow or my charcoal pencils. So you want to make sure there's no edges. You have to blend into the sides or the outlines, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm going to try and clean up my shape. I didn't draw it that great. Probably want to come along your edge and erase and make it look a little nice. I still feel like it needs to be a little softer. So see how that time I used my pencil top eraser. So this side is going to be Willow plus 2B over on top of it. And then my shadow, of course, will kind of help define this pyramid a little bit more. I do Willow plus 6B. Always make sure you're using the right pencil. And again, just like the sphere, just do a soft, dark layer. Don't feel like it has to be super dark right now. I'm more concerned about this is a dark layer, this is a medium layer. And I just soften it to kind of blend it in. All right, now we're gonna do the cube over here. First, we gotta draw the cube. So I have my flat square first. I'm gonna try and make it a little bit smaller. I don't want it to run into my sphere. Okay, so there's my cube, and then I have a bit of a shadow coming off of it, and there's my sun. So now I have three sides to work with. My darkest side is going to be this one. It's furthest away from the sun. This is going to be medium, and this is going to be really light. Okay, so let's start with the dark side first. So again, I use my Willow, and I see how I just shade it in, and it's nice and close together. By now, I'm going to use my 6B pencil. And again, just like the pyramid, I'm now working with these flat shapes. So I can now go, I can make my strokes be vertical and horizontal. I can do cross hatching. See how I'm changing directions to get it nice and dark. I'm not pressing hard. I'm layering it. And then after I think I got it, I soften it and blend it in. So this is going to be Willow plus 6B. All right, let's do the medium side. It's going to be just like the pyramid, basically. So again, I put a nice layer of willow. And see how my willow kind of merges with my edges? So now it doesn't look like, we never want outlines. Okay, that's another big thing. So now what am I going to do over here? I'm going to use my 2B, okay, because I want it to be a medium value, just like my pyramid was. So this is a big shape, and you're gonna, hopefully you don't get carried away and just start scribbling in it. See how I'm just taking my time, filling it in, because what this little assignment is about is practicing how to use this stuff again for those of you that have already done this. It's been a while, so we need to get comfortable with it again, and practice makes us better. All right, so I think I'm just gonna do like one layer. Because then, just like what I had to do up here, after I've done that layer, and as I'm erasing, it's kind of blending it too. Okay, so I'm erasing softly and lightly. So there's also like the art of like knowing how to use pressure the right way when you're doing this. All right, so I may come back to that. We'll see. So this top is going to be a little tricky. That's going to be a really light value. So I want to do a really light coat of willow, really light. And again, I want to come on top of it with my 2B pencil. I'm going to try and get this really light. I don't want to go like super dark. I want these to have 3 different values. So now I'm going to come in and use my eraser and soften this. And then also to make this top of this cube pop out, like what I did with the sphere up here, is I put a little bit of a background around it on the top. And then what that does is if you still have that outline, it eliminates that edge, hopefully. And so now I'm kind of using my eraser to kind of create this light value. I need to come back in with my 2B and clean up this edge. I don't like how messy it was. You want your edges to be clean. You don't want stuff to be messy. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to darken this, get this out of the way, because then when I do that down here, it now kind of helps create the bottom of this cube. See how then it just defines it more, like it's sitting on something. So that's what you want to do down there too. I need to fix this side, I feel like. Clean that up. Okay, so then I have over here was, again, willow plus 2B because you want a medium value. And then right here, it was again willow plus your 2B, but then I used my eraser to soften it and lighten it and create my edges. And then I put in that background so that you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so then my last one is going to be the cone. Okay, so it's a little bit different. So I need to draw my cone. So the cone has a round bottom, like an ellipse. So I have this circle at the top, and then it comes out a little bit. And since there's a circle at the top, there's a circle at the bottom. It's curved at the bottom. It's like there's this imaginary oval back there, but we don't really see that line. We just see the bottom. So make sure when you draw this that this has a curved bottom to your cone. You don't want it to be flat. So then I have this shadow going off to the side because my light source is going to be right there. So this is a little bit trickier. These two are pretty easy because you're just like filling in these shapes. But now with the cone, we're going to have to shade it with like the form or the shape of our cone, like the roundness of it. Okay, so with my cone, it's going to go from light to dark, just like my sphere. So now I'm going to use my willow and see how I'm using my willow and see how I'm kind of like curving it with my cone. I just did that. That's as much as I did. Okay. And then as I'm blending it in or softening it, see how my finger is also like, it's like I'm like imagining I'm touching that cone. So I'm going like around it side to side. Okay, that's super important. It's really tempting to go up and down because it's this tall shape, but we want to kind of reinforce that form by going side to side. Okay, so then I have my willow in. See how I only did like the far right side because it's getting darker and it's as it goes to the right. So over here, I don't want it to be too dark. So now I'm going to use my 6B and see this is going to be a little bit tricky. I'm going to have to curve it with my form. And it's going to take a little bit. And I'm just doing like a light layer because then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back again to add a little bit more. All right, so then I've added more 6B. And then even as I'm blending it over, I'm using that. And so now I know, see how it's kind of creating this division here? So I know I need a little bit more layers of this 6B to get it to move. All right, so now I'm going to use my 2B. And so again, my 2B is going to merge with my 6B. I'm just trying to create this soft value over here in the middle and to the left. I don't want to get too close to that edge over there on the left. But if I do, I just come back with my eraser. It's easy to fix. Anything can be fixed in charcoal. So I kind of just want it to soften over there. And then what I want to do, see how I have this big black outline over here? I want to get rid of that. And see how easy that was to get rid of that if I put a little bit of willow there. And then now it's gone. And now it looks like it's sitting somewhere. I'm going to go ahead and put in my shadow. And again, that kind of helps create that bottom edge area. I'm going to come in and I'm going to start cleaning this up. I want this left side to be nice and bright and highlighted. Even when I erase, I kind of want to work side to side. And then I'm going to really clean up that edge and make it nice and clean and bright. And again, usually after you erase, you have to soften back that value. And so now I'm looking and I'm like, okay, I need more contrast happening over here on this far right side. I am doing some cross hatching, but then I'm coming back to just side to side. So Maybe I bring in my eraser a little bit. I'm super being like soft. I'm kind of like feathering it away a little bit, just to kind of to get it to, so it's dark, medium line. It's like gradual, so it looks like it's rounding. And then I can add more contrast down here with my shadow, darken it. And there you go. Those are your 4 forms you need to practice and do for this assignment.